right, looks like we are just about live. Welcome, welcome everyone. I'm here with all of our amazing panelists, different professionals in the esports industry. So glad to have you all. And glad to have any students, teachers, whoever is watching, glad to have you all with us as well. From our many different platforms we're running on here. My name is Maddie Park. I work for Garff Esports, and I'm excited to be hosting today and asking all your questions to these lovely panelists. So I will throw it over to you guys. Apologies for my voice here. Just say your name, kind of what you're about, and what we can ask you questions about, and we'll just love to get to know you guys a little better. So we'll start with Tyler, just because you're first on my screen here.
All right, cool. Hello, everybody. My name's Tyler. I work for Space Station Gaming. I've worked for Space Station for just about 3 years. Started under their, more media agency, influencer agency side, and kind of migrated over and took over a lot of the responsibilities for partnerships and sponsorships and marketing. And now it's kind of my primary area of focus. So all things working with outside partners and sponsors, and just pushing our organization farther. That's about it.
Thank you, Tyler. Cole, you want to go next for us?
Absolutely, yeah. Hey everybody, my name's Cole. I work at Team Liquid as a sales planner in sales operations. Before coming to Team Liquid, I worked at Bava Media, which is a digital talent agency for streamers on Facebook, gaming, YouTube. And before that, I worked at UCLA, where I helped start up the esports program with some really, really good friends. And that's really sort of like the root of all my experience and connections in the industry, is helping build that program at UCLA, meeting so many wonderful people. So excited to be here today and chat and hopefully help some people out on their journeys in esports.
Absolutely, appreciate having you. Alicen, you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Alicen. I'm currently at Gen.G. Before that was at TSM Blitz. Before that ran a speedrunning site, if any of you are into speedrunning. And then before that was at Twitch. I have mostly been in branded content and sponsorship, a lot of influencer activations, a lot of branded content at Twitch in terms of integrating with the site. And I just like working with different clients and seeing how we can work with gamers. So.
Awesome. And last but not least, we got Bethany.
Hey everybody, my name is Bethany Pyles. I work for Cloud9 Training Grounds, and I also work for NASEF, the North American Scholastic Esports Federation. And yeah, I also work for the gameHERs as the collegiate coordinator, which is a new role I just picked up a couple months ago.
Awesome. So now that you've hopefully had a chance to get to hear from these guys and figure out what they're about, if you anyone watching live has any questions, feel free to ask those so that we can start to hear what you guys want to hear from these guys. So let's start off with a question from Wayne Middle School, which is, how can we as students balance schoolwork with the need to practice our games? So if any of you have experience balancing multiple things at once there.
I can talk on this a little bit. I think there's a moment in every at least college esports student's career where they pile on a ton of different roles and they have a hard time figuring out which one to spend their time working on while also balancing schoolwork. And I was never an athlete for our UCLA program. However, I was the director of esports side. So I was working with all of our players who would come to me and be like, hey, I don't know if I can get this done. I don't know if I can make scrims, or I don't know if I can be here for the practice or for the game. What I used to always tell them is, you're at school, so you should prioritize school first and foremost. That doesn't mean you should neglect your responsibilities to your team and to other people, but really prioritize your schoolwork. If you find that you need to cut down on some of your extracurricular activities in order to do your best on a couple of them, I think that's very necessary. It's better to have a lot of quality in your life rather than quantity. And so focus on your schoolwork, focus on your team and your activities. And if you have other things in your life that are not getting the attention they deserve, maybe trim down a little bit so you can focus on what really matters to you.
I'd suggest looking at deliberate practice. It's something that as a coach we use often with players. There's about 4 or 5 tenets of deliberate practice, and one is just maintaining focus for a large period of time. So you can do that, and then also setting goals. Setting goals is really important, so that when you're practicing, it's really intentional. That time is supposed to be used to get better. So obviously you probably have a way that you do your homework and you already know how, but if you can do that kind of same situation for your gaming, you'll kind of be able to balance the two better. But just try to track goals and try to have a period of time where you're able to focus, even if it's an hour, just without any distractions, just like you would study.
Awesome. Thank you to Wayne Middle School for asking that question. We have one here from Tyler at Oak Canyon Junior High, who asked, what does a day at your jobs look like?
I can take this one. This one's it kind of varies every day. I'm really lucky in my position where I've kind of got my hands in a lot of different facets of our organization, from hiring new people to making decisions on, where to allocate resources, to where, we want to put merch, or how we want to direct things forward in a bunch of different categories. But typically it's early morning, trying to knock out a lot of email. The job that I've got, it puts me in contact with a lot of different people, a lot of vendors, a lot of clients. So I try and make sure that we're staying on top of that. And then other than that, we're constantly on meetings in all these sub kind of categories, and making sure that everything that we're doing in content, in social media, and all these things kind of points back into putting our brand farther and putting us in front of more people, and doing more kind of creative stuff. So it's a lot of what we're doing now, sitting on a voice and video meeting and trying to navigate things and move forward. But sometimes we even find time to play some games, even though that's not very typical anymore.
Any other insights from the others on what your typical day might look like?
Mine is a lot more of just passing through different things for campaigns. So we have a couple more than 3 specific different teams, but I mostly work with our graphic designers, our video editors, so creative services, our talent team, who works with a lot of our different creators, and then just our creative team in terms of what the different ideas are. So figuring out how to have those different groups collaborate is a lot of what I do. So it may be the creatives come up with some idea for a stream, but then our talent managers have to go out and get top streamers who will be able to carry the content, and then design team might come up with the different overlays for the streams or the promotional graphics or things like that. I guess we also have a social team, so that's another important part of it, but it's just making sure everything holistically comes together. So it's a lot of basically being a traffic controller in some degree.
Mine would be similar to a lot of you. It's remote, it's online, so a lot of the same kind of formats. For coaching, I'm looking at a lot at VODs. I get to look at a lot of gameplay, a lot of matches. We run a lot of in-house tournaments with youth and adults as well. But I'm also looking at coach performance. So I'm watching for the coaches' performance, not just the players. They're looking at that. I go back and I go through QA. So I get to look at how our coaches are coaching, score them, and they get 3 performance reviews every year. So I'm on track of that. We have about 60 coaches that work for Training Grounds. So they all answer to me, and they're all coming to me with their questions and issues. I'm also the one hiring and onboarding them. So I just have to keep a close connection with the coaches and make sure they're developing the way I want.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I loved all the insight into your daily lives. It was interesting, especially how different it can be in different parts of the esports world. Speaking of, we have a question from Mitchell at Weber Innovations, who asks, what qualifications like schooling and certificates are required to be in the esports professional scene?
At least for me, so at least the roles I've been in, the first thing I'll say is you need a BA, but it doesn't, for me, matter what your BA was in. It's just a lot of jobs require a BA, which can sometimes be a problem. And that's a whole other discussion. But in terms of breaking into the industry, a lot of it is about having the job experience. So if you're able to volunteering at your club, that's huge. Being able to get involved in real production, that's a big one. Even just attending events like with Twitch, one of the reasons I got recruited is because I go to Twitch cons, I watch a lot of streams, having that domain knowledge and then being able to have worked within those areas can be super helpful in a way that honestly school doesn't necessarily prepare you for. So
yeah, to follow up on Alicen, definitely going places, meeting people is a huge part of breaking into the industry. I mean, there's no universal requirement for what type of education or background you need to have. So it's really, really open in that sense. But one thing is for certain is that if you're good at making friends, you can find friends and places to help you get where you want to go. That was really when, I historically was an introverted person, but it was once I made it to college and realized like if I wanted to break into the scene that I had to put myself out there. So I kind of transformed into a social butterfly to an extent, just meeting people, going to every event I could go to, just because I wanted to see what types of opportunities were out there for me. Of course, I was pursuing a degree in political science at UCLA, but obviously political science is not necessarily connected to esports. Of course, there are elements of it that are useful in speaking and knowing people and knowing organizations, but realistically, you can major in anything and still find your way into the esports industry through networking and through passion. Show up to events, watch panels, and as you know, the world returns to more live events, those are really great opportunities to go and meet people beyond just Zoom stuff. So these are awesome panels, but also get out there, meet people, and just be someone who's friendly and wants to work hard.
Amazing. I love hearing about all of your guys' passion for this. So amazing to hear that you just chose to do this. Because you like doing it, which is similar to a question we have from Pleasant Grove Junior High, where they ask, why did you choose to do this as your job? Specifically, the area that you are in, wherever that may be in the esports world.
I think for myself, at least, what drew me to esports was it's like the table has been set for esports for a long time, whether it's like just live stream content, it's gaming content on the internet, or it's like traditional pro sports. All those things are very interesting to me, but being able to be in control and have some kind of input into building a brand and building that brand's identity and personality, that was what drew me from, the kind of hands-off kind of agency work that I was doing, where it was more like ABC kind of work. Brand wants this, to contact creator, we do the thing, we get paid. That was fun, and we got to do a lot of cool stuff. But at least for myself, being able to see the final finished product of what SSG is and have that somehow be like a reflection of the personalities that are behind it, myself and a bunch of other people that are on the management team here, is really satisfying. And then also being able to you watch the competitive side and see the success there is one thing. Like, I'm a Utah Jazz fan, and that's sometimes very painful, and we sometimes win, sometimes lose or whatever. But when it's esports and it's like your job and something that's as like tied to your daily life as it is, the losses and the wins are even more hard and even more satisfying when they happen. So there's a lot of facets to it, but it's kind of just consumed a lot of my life. So being able to wake up every day and just think of how to push things forward and do cool stuff, it's very very appealing for me.
I definitely didn't enter in with the idea that I was going to have a career in esports. I was actually a social worker before all this, which is probably why I got into this. I did not enjoy social work. It was just really draining. I was a refugee caseworker. And then after that, I switched to a hotline where I was working with survivors of intimate partner violence. So I was just kind of looking for a next step for me because I knew this just wasn't where I could live, retire, and be happy and fulfilled. And I saw my coworkers feeling that way. So I felt like I need to start looking around. What am I really passionate about? I was gaming on the side. I'd gamed since I was little. I just didn't think of it as a hobby I'm sorry, I didn't think of it as a career. I just thought of it as a hobby. Overwatch came out, and I started thinking about, community, and Twitch was at its peak. Overwatch League was this kind of grand production at the time. It was really interesting to me, and it kind of pulled me in my free time. I started looking for ways to just get involved with youth and development because that's what my background was in. I was also coaching basketball, and so I just tried to weave things together in my mind and just start planning for myself. What am I really going to enjoy? Connected Camps was the nonprofit that I found it on Idealist. And this was run by 2 UCI professors. And they kind of mentored me into, my career. They helped me build an esports program. It was the first coaching program that NASEF ever offered, and I built it. And because I built it, I had so much insight after that when I was ready to move on of how from the ground up these things work and function, that I was really capable of doing a lot after that a lot of people didn't have insight into. So because I kind of threw myself into it with the transferable skills that I just believed in and had some people support me, it just kind of launched from there. And all of a sudden I was qualified and capable of doing a lot of things that I just hadn't imagined, but really loved. And so I've stayed because it's so fun. It's just a great atmosphere. The coworkers that I get to work with just, bring me a lot of joy. And it's just, why not? Esports is such it's also you feel like you're pioneering something. It's so progressive. Everything is changing week to week. It's just so interesting. And so it's like, I want to stay now. It's great.
I think that transitions well into a question we have from Pleasant Grove High, which is esports your main and only income? And do you see that progressing into the future with it growing as an industry, or where do you see that going in the future?
I think this actually taps a little bit into how I ended up in esports and gaming. I was actually, and it sounds like Tyler is somewhat similar. I was actually working at a marketing advertising agency, and I was working on different campaigns, entertainment in general, some esports and gaming. And then that's how I ended up being recruited to Twitch to do gaming full time. But I guess what I can see happening is if I ever decided to branch out, or if I ever wanted to move on from that, I would probably still stay in advertising as an industry in and of itself. I would either end up at an agency or an in-house at marketing. I would say that's true. And that's one of the pieces of advice I give to anyone looking to get into esports and gaming is get really good at a role that you're interested in the first place, and then try to find that in esports and gaming. Because if you just try to break into esports and gaming, I've seen lots of people burn out because they take the first role they can get. Turns out they don't want to do that for 8 to 10 or 12 hours a day. And then they just fall out of it. Whereas the people I see happiest in esports and gaming found the skill set they love, find the work that they love, and then found it in gaming because they loved gaming in the first place. So at least that's what I've run into.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Concentrate on what you like about gaming, or what you think you might like about esports. For myself, I didn't start with the goal of working with with SSG or with an esports org, but I really liked working with content creators. I was a content creator in a past life myself, and kind of understood the process of working with brands. And so working under the agency as a non-gaming kind of rep, scratched that itch a little bit. But when we landed a contract with ESPN to kind of consult them on some esports stuff and kind of direct them in the right direction with their approach with gaming. And then that kind of opened my eyes with there are some big, groups that are looking at esports as a way to pivot and to approach new audiences. And so that kind of got the gears turning a little bit. But when I was able to jump in and start, selling sponsorships or partnerships against SSG, that's where I kind of saw the full potential. Every conversation we had on the traditional media side, outside of gaming, we'd bring up SSG as a potential client, and everyone was interested. Oh, esports, gaming. I'm being told by all my higher ups that we need to look at gaming and esports. what does that mean? So as I was educating them, I was kind of educating myself a lot as well. Like, the book's still unwritten on esports of like what the full capacity is and like what you can like do in the space. So it's very exciting, but like Alicen was saying, like reverse engineer it, figure out what you like what your strengths are. If it is content creation, if it's working with outside brands, if it's just, being very passionate about the gaming space and loving to play games, like there's ways that you can find yourself in gaming, but I would start from a place of passion and from a place of like, sincere interest.
Yep. I agree with both of them. That's absolutely true. It was sort of in the same situation where I grew up playing games and then found out that I could have a traditional business role within the gaming and esports industry. And that's what really made it click for me. It wasn't just the idea of playing games all day that drew me to this industry. It was the fact that because I had been playing video games for most of my life, I had the contextual knowledge to do a really good job in a traditional business role, provide like analytical advice or really think in the mind of the demographic, like what would a gamer want? Or, if I was a kid growing up, like what would I want to see from the business side of things? And so when I was at UCLA starting things up with my friends, it really opened my eyes that I didn't have to stick to something that was just political science. I could find a way to take that skill set of understanding people and working in business situations and then apply it to my passion. And like Tyler was saying, it really did come from a place of passion for me. It was about being excited about where I was going to work rather than just graduating, finding a job, maximizing my salary, but not as much considering like, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? And so incorporating esports into that traditional business path really gave me that fulfillment and that happiness that I was looking for, because it feels like my work is extremely meaningful to me personally and to an industry that is blossoming and will continue to grow and develop, and for the rest of the future, really, because people are on their phones, on their computers all the time, and seeing people compete in an online setting is really exciting to the younger generation.
Chime in. My whole income is esports related, and I've tried to keep it that way through kind of, if you're familiar with just like an employer status, like you're an employee at a place, I have that stability, but I've also started to contract my time to increase my pay, increase what I can make in esports. So, I think a lot of artists tend to do this, but as a manager, as someone that like holds knowledge over systems and operations, I've started to do that as well. And sometimes that's just the nature of an esports. Sometimes you're brought in as a contractor, sometimes you're employed. And so just getting used to that feeling of both, or comfortable kind of taking the risk with something that you're unfamiliar with, which for me was contracting, has actually helped a lot. And it's increased my network a lot more too, because I'm able to meet more people, but I'm able to tell them what time I have and what time I don't. So I don't have an unlimited time during the day, but I can tell them what days I do. I can basically create my own schedule and with these contracting jobs, and then make money on the side doing things that people want my knowledge for. So I've been consulting and contracting, but everything that I'm doing is esports related, and it's my total income.
Awesome. Those were amazing answers and good to know. I think we've slightly covered this one, but I'd like to hear from all of you on it. Do you still play games with being in your positions? And that comes from Skyridge High.
I think we're all going to say yes is going to be the answer. I'm guessing, but I think the thing is, as we mentioned, it comes from a place of passion. So like I have less time for games, but I don't think I'll ever stop playing games. And I mentioned maybe someday I won't work in esports and gaming, but I don't think I'll ever actually stop playing video games. And that's a completely separate thing. So
I've been trying to, institute a, actually scheduled time at our company for gaming, like some kind of recess where we play. A lot of us like end up playing Smite at like 11 or 12 at night. So definitely play less games than I did before. It was like a job type thing, but for sure, like it might not be a surprise that the people that work here are very sweaty gamers and want to play as much as they can.
Yeah. It's like, to Alicen's point, the question isn't do we play games, but more so like what do we play and do we have time to play it? I've been playing League of Legends for 10 years, so that's like crazy to even say. Halo, I think, will be an all-time favorite for me. Just growing up playing Halo 3 with my middle school friends, and going back and playing speedrunning, all that stuff is really, really fun and exciting to me. Recently, I've gotten into some single-player stuff. I'm trying Elden Ring. I really suck at it, but it's fun. It's really, really fun, and I just try to find time for games while also balancing all the work that I have to do, because the work is exciting and fulfilling to me, but sometimes you need that time to de-stress and just play and connect with people. That's another great point, is when you're working in this industry, playing games with people is a great way to network. In a sense, you can just get together, play some ARAM in League of Legends, and just talk about life, because you don't really need to focus on what your character is doing in that situation.
Yeah, at Cloud9, we have like a gaming time set aside every hour on Fridays where our staff can game, just with training ground staff, and we usually do ARAMs or Spike Rush, something quick. But we're really just talking during that time, like, how's your day going? It's less casual. We're not talking about meetings. We're just talking about us. How was your weekend? What are you looking forward to? Things like that, which is helpful. And then also you get to play test something sometimes. So sometimes there's access to new games. Sometimes you're getting an early beta. And sometimes you have to write a curriculum, so you've got to know a game, spend some time on it. So it's actually very helpful to stay on top of games. There's always going to be a new one. There's always going to be something trendy. So setting some time aside, either in your personal life or professional, to just look at these games and see where you might be able to integrate them or start coaching them. It's good to look at viewership. So staying connected to the games itself is really important.
With that, we have Matthew at Bonneville High, who wants to know who your Smash Bros names are.
The only smashing I do is smashing controllers on the ground. I hate that game.
I'm a cash, and I'm just gonna say that Pikachu is my favorite, but I'm not particularly good at Pikachu. But that's just because I play casually.
Yeah, same. I'm super casual, Super Smash Brothers player. When I do play, I like playing Mr. Game & Watch, because I love the RNG factor of whether or not you do absolutely nothing when you side B, or whether you kill someone instantly in game. So yeah, Mr. Game & Watch is my go-to.
Well, we have another question from, I lost it, just kidding, from Pleasant Grove High, but this is from Sky, who is a self-proclaimed Jigglypuff main. For those of you who know Utah, he asks, how big do you think esports will get in Utah?
I don't know if there's any other native Utahns in the chat, but I grew up here. I grew up in a small town called Plain City, went to Fremont High School. Esports was not on the radar back in 2009 when I graduated. And so I think seeing where it started and where it's at now is incredible. It's awesome what Ken Garff is doing. We hope to, SSG hopes to get more involved and to cultivate more of like a strong base of esports and stuff for our state, whatever that looks like. But yeah, I think the future is super unwritten with high school esports and with esports in general. I think that it surpasses a lot of traditional sports. I was a lacrosse player in high school, and that was definitely like club level, and that was like kind of blowing up when I was playing. And I could definitely see esports kind of taking that kind of same thing, where it takes over a lot of people's time and attention, and the high schools start having to pay attention to it and really cultivate programs and opportunities for kids to play. But yeah, I think it's going to be huge. And I think it's going to not take that long for it to start really kind of popping off, for sure.
Thanks
also,
for
maybe there's a lot of gamers in Utah, because one of the people we recently hired at Gen.G is also from Utah. So maybe that's just a whole thing at this point.
Yeah, who knows? We hope there's a lot. We hope. So we have another question from Weber Innovation. This one's from Daniel. He says, how does one go about joining an esports team after high school? Or maybe to elaborate that from your positions, where do you recommend they go or go for the future at this young age?
Oh, training and development is key. And right after high school, you've got to keep training. So find a coach, find a mentor, find somebody that can have a different perspective. Even if you think you're the best player in the world, having a coach is really important. They're going to see things you don't, and they're going to have advice to kind of push you forward, ideally, if you're finding the right person. Finding the right person is probably the hardest part, but find somebody that's a little bit more connected maybe than your local. If you're looking to go like academy, even amateur, there are people out there that know the scene very well and can kind of mentor you through it. Right now, there's not a whole lot of very clear paths, which is why networking and finding people and joining discords is really important in esports, because you've got to kind of know somebody that knows somebody, unfortunately, in a lot of these spaces. So you have to keep training, because even the pros at the very top level, they're getting better all the time too. So the bar is always being pushed. So don't plateau, keep pushing, and find somebody that can kind of get you to the goal line, whatever that is for you. But discords are a great way to start, finding somewhere you can scrim or start having matches with people that are a little bit better than you, rather than people playing with whoever you've played with in high school. If you've played with the same like 5 or 10 people with the same 5 or 10 high schools, you might be great in that pool, but you have to start kind of challenging yourself outside of that too.
This is just kind of a question following up on a lot of things you guys have said. A lot of you have mentioned networking. Are there events or places or people that they can go to starting now or start looking into now as students in Utah to start getting that networking going?
One of the things I'd recommend, although I can't volunteer everyone else on this call, but like I will share my email address, and like you can email me, go to these types of networking events where it's workshops. One of the big things, at least for me, that I've run into is, as students, you aren't looking for jobs yet, you're just looking for information. So you can actually leverage that, because you can go to people and be like, I just want to learn about your job. I just want to find out about it. And they know that you're not trying to get anything out of them. They don't owe you anything. So in my opinion, leverage that as much as you can as a student. And then you can meet people genuinely at like dream hacks, at Twitch cons, at your local events. If you have LANs, if you have things like that, just anywhere where people are meeting up and celebrating whatever their passion is a good chance to meet people, and is a good chance to then ask them to coffee or to lunch or things like that, and just find out about the industry.
Yeah, I think that's awesome too. Like as you're trying to network and, connect with people that are, part of a tier 1 org like Gen.G, Cloud9, Liquid, all these like amazing places. That's awesome. That's cool. Great places to spend your time, but also network with your peers, the people that are currently in high school, currently, looking at collegiate options as well. Like there's so much future growth in esports that's going to happen, and you're going to be growing along with it. So don't just focus on, jumping into the, pro orgs or trying to get involved at like the highest level you can. Like we've been kind of putting back to start with the places of passion, find a group of people that have similar goals and interests, and get to work. You can start doing your own stuff in esports today if you really want to. And so that makes it a lot easier to connect with people that are already doing it for a job. And then when you do start the process of either applying for collegiate programs or for internships and jobs with bigger orgs, having already started the process of building out your own stuff will make you a lot like more appealing for people to network with you, and like to have common ground to jump off from. So yeah, definitely like always be engaging and reaching out to people that you want advice from, but also, yeah, make sure you cultivate those relationships with your peers as well.
I'll just add on that it is important how you approach these people to a degree. You don't have to be incredibly professional, but I do get like DMs from people often, or emails asking for advice, but they don't have very like clear, concrete things they're asking me for. And I don't often have time to go through and have one-on-ones with people, but I'm willing to help. So if you have really concrete things that you're looking for, you can think through those things. What do you want to know? What goals do you have? And then kind of form those into some sort of communication with these folks. I think you'll get better responses if you kind of keep it, specific to what you're looking for as you talk to people, even at Twitch, instead of just broadly, hey, can you tell me about esports? Really like hone in. Often, but before an interview or even an internship, look at that company, see their mission vision. I look at who's on staff and what they do. I try to get to know these people a little bit outside of just like my assumptions of them, and then go in and start talking to them about what I want to know from them. And you have to do a little digging, but it's worthwhile because you come off as wanting to know really specific things, and you have insight. Maybe you've looked at things, you've researched. You're not coming and asking for a free grab from somebody that doesn't have a lot of time. Go with like a really intentional kind of professional email, and you'll get great responses, and maybe even more.
Just one more thing really quick is if people don't have time for you, don't feel like you should stop reaching out to people. It's not a reflection on you. It doesn't mean you're not worth time. Some people are just more busy than others, or even just like in terms of phase, like there are times where I can't take any calls. There are some times where I can take like 10 one-on-ones in a week. So don't take it as rejection or anything. It's not a reflection on you. So.
Yep. That is really, really great advice. I've always thought about it as just not taking it personally. If you have a mission, you have a goal for yourself in mind, be polite, be, brave, reach out to people, but don't lose faith in yourself when things don't go exactly the way you planned. Things have not panned out for me exactly the way I wanted to before. And I still ended up being in positions where I was super happy and kept making progress throughout my career, all the way to Liquid. So, yeah, people are busy, just like Alicen mentioned, and don't take it personally if they don't reach out. And definitely, to Bethany's point, like reach out it doesn't necessarily have to be like super professional, but if you have some questions in mind, like be prepared to ask those, even just on like a 15-minute call, so that you can get the most out of that call, and the other person doesn't need to take out an hour of their day to spend time like figuring out like what you want, but rather come to them with what you think you want already, and they'll do their best to answer any kind of questions for you.
So maybe this was already answered in this last question or in questions before, but if any of you have any advice you would give to your high school self, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
I would just, we did touch on this a little bit earlier, but I think as a high school student, I was very hard on myself for not having a clear picture of what I wanted to do down the road. Like I knew I had certain interests, and I knew that I wanted to go to college. I knew I wanted to do marketing type stuff. But if I could go back, I would just say, hey, take it easy. Probably just like concentrate on what you think makes you special and what makes you stand out from the rest of the pack. And for me, that was like YouTube videos and content creation, all that stuff that I didn't spend as much time on as I got older. Whereas now, I think that those things are really key in setting you apart from the people that are going to be competing with you down the road. So college education, all very important, but almost everybody that's listening to this is going to pursue college and education as well, and going to get a lot of the same information. So what are you going to bring to the table later that no one else can? I would just concentrate on that as much as you can. Obviously there are important things to focus on, and education is one of them, but don't lose sight of like making sure you're cultivating yourself as well.
Thanks for speaking on that, Tyler. This is another one that may be directed slightly towards you, so apologies if you're doing a lot of the talking. But we've had a lot of students who are interested in becoming pro players, and they view that as their way to get into esports, but there's a lot of burnout in esports, especially in pro playing. So what are some ways that you all have seen players evolve from being just a professional player into other places in the esports industry?
I think, for a player, obviously they're very good at the game. That just because you're really good at a game doesn't mean you have to be a professional player. There's a lot of roles within gaming gaming development companies, where they require someone with a high level view on the game to help set the tone for competitive play. Specifically at Riot, they have their entire game analysis team, where being good at the game is a huge plus for being able to provide to the team. You need other skill sets that you can earn through your degree in college or through working on projects in college, but being really good at the game gives you a special view on that. So if being a professional player, if the burnout is not for you, you want a more traditional career at a business, then use your game knowledge to set you apart. Like Tyler was mentioning on that last question, find a way to set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd. If you're in the top 1% or higher of a game, in terms of skill, use that to your advantage. If being part of game design is something you want to be a part of, then take your game knowledge and use that to your advantage. I think I've seen some friends at Riot who have done that, and they're doing a fantastic job applying their game knowledge to their career.
There are things you could do now too, like if you're looking at the pro scene. Sorry, for instance, like our teams put together a structure so that burnout is preventable. Like ideally it doesn't happen, but if it does, it's like under controlled circumstances too. So we have a performance psychologist that is always around for the team. We use a hotline too, so that if our players want to talk to somebody neutral, they can go on a hotline if they're having, a family issue or something going on with their personal lives that they don't want to share with the team or staff. We also use, nutritionists. They're working out. They have a regiment that they're doing to keep their body in shape. They have their housing and basic needs cared for as well. So there are things that you can start doing too, even as a high school player, to start mimicking some of the things that pros do to keep their minds and bodies healthy. They are playing the game for a long period of time. That's part of it, but they're doing it in a way where they're not, hurting their back or their wrist, their neck, ideally. So just model some of those things. Are all over the internet. There's a whole lot of Twitter, folks online that do work for all sorts of different teams. The EG doctor, for example, does a lot of panels. She talks a lot about nutrition and sleep and things like that. We also partner with FitGamer, which is an app, and it's actually a public app that you can use and download. FitGamer will track your sleep, your nutrition, if you really want to get nitty gritty. And that's what our pro players use too, so that we can see data from all their whole week. How are they feeling? How did they sleep up until, playoffs? Are they getting more sleep, less sleep? And can we fine tune that with them? So there's things that you can do now to start preventing that even for yourself. And you start modeling some of the things that we're doing in the scene.
Very good. Kind of talking along the lines of other people that you guys get to work with. We have another question from Mitchell at Weber asking, do you guys ever get to meet with the game devs, and what is your relationship with them?
Yeah, we on the esports side, we do talk to the devs quite a bit. I mean, whether it's at the league and partnership level, like a lot of the titles that we're participating in, we have a partnership with like 343 in Halo, or for Psionics in Rocket League. And so there is a lot of back and forth on some of the business side stuff and some of the league stuff. There are others high res. Space Station just has a kind of a unique tie back to Smite. That's where we kind of started, and a lot of our staff and their staff have been tight with one another and played the game together a lot. So there is that kind of homey level that we have with some of the developers. But yeah, most of our interaction with the developers are very kind of business like. We wish that Psionics and then would take our advice how to make the game better and stuff, but a lot of the time they don't really want our opinions on stuff. So it's a lot of just kind of clerical business stuff that at least I get to deal with developers.
At NASEF, I've worked with developers. In fact, Todd, who helped build Smite, and Todd Harris is my boss. So I get a lot of insight from him sometimes. I went to Atlanta recently, and just driving around with him, I'm talking about the game, where'd you come up with the name Smite? And so there's times where you're going to make connections and maybe not like directly related to your work that has been happening for me, where I'm meeting these people, maybe they're management, maybe they're, a board member. So there's connections all over that seep into esports, even if it's the publishers themselves or people developing the games. There's connections everywhere.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry to keep going, but I know a lot of developers really value the relationships they have with esports. I think esports is a very community driven thing. And if there's one thing that almost every developer could use is more direct connection with community stuff. So a lot of times talking to esports orgs for developers, at least, I think helps them, keep the way that they build stuff out and the way they approach things more community minded as well. So there are those cases where we like do feel some more like because we're fans of the games too. So whenever we do get to like have our stamp on the game a little bit, it's really cool. But like I said, hopefully that just like continues to be a thing, and like developers look for more opportunities to involve esports orgs in more of what they're doing. But there's such big monster companies a lot of times, so like they don't have time to really sit down and like hear all of our thoughts and stuff. But yeah, there are a lot of cool things that we do with developers, like developing different skins and stuff within games. Like that's one of my favorite things we get to do, is just throw ideas at them for different stuff we want to collaborate with them on. But yeah, I hopefully developers involve us a little bit more down the road.
Maybe working more with developers is one of these things, but what do you guys wish were different about the esports world and industry, or what needs improving that these students can take advantage of and be advocates for? Is there some change that we can maybe be working towards with them?
I know that at least in the last, couple of years, there's been more of a focus on creating spaces for more people to get involved, specifically, women and people that generally haven't been included as much as they probably should have. And so, we've looked at a bunch of different ways that we can do that at the esports level and at the org level. But hopefully as things go on, we just do create more of a like inclusive environment so that more people can get involved. I think that's where things are headed. And talking to kind of some of my counterparts at other orgs, I know that everyone's kind of got their eyes on this, but no one's got a really good clear path of how this happens. So maybe it's a lot of these up and coming people that want to work within esports, like keeping that as like a focal point. But yeah, I think it's just opening up esports to more people and more groups. I think that's probably the key part. I think that esports can improve. But I think if you look at other places where people are competitive in regular sports and otherwise, I think esports is still ahead of them, but there's always ground to be gained in making it more, accessible for people.
All right, well, we are actually approaching the end of the hour. So with this last few minutes that we have here, if any of you have any last advice or help that you can shout out or give to our students, we welcome that. And then we'll be done.
I would say don't be disappointed if you don't get immediately into the industry. That's totally okay. Like that's completely normal. A lot of roles want you to have work experience before you get in, and it also doesn't mean you're never going to get in. But also, once you are in, it's actually very easy to jump from job to job. It's very weird. It's hard to get in, may take a while, but once you're in, you can often like just end up at different orgs a lot of the time, or at least I've run into that.
Keep playing games. That's my advice. Keep playing games. That is your the driver for what keeps you passionate. If esports is interesting to you, chances are you play games, and that's just the way it works. So keep playing games, stay up on news, companies that are interesting to you. You'll oftentimes think of ideas that, to Tyler's point earlier, that where the industry needs help, you'll be the creator of change just by recognizing like what what is different from a younger mind. If you were to get into the esports industry, if you were to go to college, graduate, and then be ready for a full-time job, like what would you want to be impacting? And so keep playing games so that when you do end up in that position, you have the knowledge base to pull from and make sure that what you're working on is impactful for the demographic that you're working towards.
100%. Also, the most underrated skill sets are just being accountable and punctual and reliable. Just get in the habit of doing what you say that you're going to do, and you'll be set apart from a lot of people that apply for jobs in esports. So yeah, just do the base level stuff, and you'll be impressed with how much that kind of puts you ahead.
I would say we need you and your perspective, like many others have said here. So especially to women that are looking to get involved, the space sometimes doesn't look like it's meant for us because it wasn't built around us at all. It was built for like the default male. So we need you, and we need your voice and perspective to start shaping and progressing the scene in a way that fits for all of us. So if it doesn't look like esports is made for you, you go on a landing page and you don't see anybody that looks like you, we need you, because there are people in the scene. We're a little bit invisible at times because we're in the background, but we're getting there. And the more perspectives and diverse perspectives that we have collectively, it's going to push things forward faster. So please don't be intimidated by, maybe the superficial pieces that esports especially puts in front of us as a default male invitation. You're welcome. And I just want to extend the invitation to get involved.
Thank you all for that amazing advice and for all of this time. Apologies to those students whose questions we didn't get to, but we only have these guys for this hour. But again, thank you all for being here and talking to our students. We really appreciate the time you've taken, and we really appreciate everyone who's watching live. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.